Welcome to another TERF Talk Down Under. I'm Stassja and with me is Ange.
Hi, Stars.
Hi, how's it going?
Oh, good. It's a bit rainy here today, so my internet's going to be a bit choppy.
No, we'll persevere.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a very busy week in TERF news here in Australia. It's going off. I guess there's been three big stories, but I suppose the big one that most people will already know about is Kath Deves walks back her apology about what she said about trans children.
Good one, Kath.
I'm glad, and what was really encouraging was to see Scott Morrison come out in support of her and say some really sensible things like these surgeries are irreversible. This is a huge decision that's going to change someone's life forever, that it's not to be too lightly. That was massive. But for anyone who watched the media conference, bless you, who watched that media press conference, what was really disheartening was all these female journalists in their 20s saying, but that's not happening. That doesn't happen in Australia.
Yeah. Of the many, of the study that I've done that never led to any career, I actually did a double degree, and one half of it was writing, and I studied journalism. Now, I cannot believe what passes for journalism these days. Like the women that were yelling out these things to Morrison about Kath Deves and, claiming that the things that Kath said were not true, and that Morrison, was passing on information that was incorrect. If these women had just looked at basic resources, even the guidelines of the Royal Children's Hospital, they would see that all of the things that Kath claims are happening. Or if they looked at any overseas news source or anything outside of Transorgs, even this little dodgy channel of ours, they would be enlightened to what's actually going on in society. But none of them have taken the time to look, because this is the whole part of this silencing. It's the no platforming and the absolute denial of the opposite side. But what I've noticed is their refusal to show our side of things, or the other side of these things, means that people are seeking out alternative news sources. And what's happening, they're putting stuff into Google and this stuff's coming up and it's actually piquing them. But it's so dishonest. And to have, respected news sources and newspapers and journos lie on television is really confronting.
Yeah,
that level of dishonesty, and the fact that these journalists are allowed to do so without recourse. Like, it was only a few years ago that if you lied in the capacity of your job as a journalist, then you could lose your job. And now they can just make up absolute bullshit. They can misquote. They can barefaced lie, and there's no consequences. The Press Council and all of these other agencies are toothless tigers. It's just horrendous. And, people outside Australia wouldn't believe the lengths our media is going to hide the truth. They wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's just infuriating. I was very glad to see Bernard Lane tweeted about it. Bernard, Australian, and then he got a spot on Sky News talking about what's really going on. And it's like, 15-year-old girls have had their breasts removed. It's there in the fucking court cases if you bothered to look.
Yeah. What's happening is, amateurs like us, who, and I've got a little bit of journalist training. I've worked as a journalist, but people like us and researchers in our group, we're doing all the work that the journalists should be doing. So we're actually, because of all the lies that are going on out there, we're out there finding out the facts and publishing them for people to read. Now, we're not getting paid for that. We're doing it in our own time, and we're actually, we're the alternative news service. It's insane.
I know. I had that conversation.
And we're not getting paid.
I had that conversation with Kit Kowalski. I was like, I can't believe that it's left up to us to be researching.
Yeah.
Because she does so much work on the ACON aspect. There's also a Twitter person to follow called ACON, and they revealed this week that they've received screenshots of government employees, public servants, being encouraged by ACON to donate money to ACON and giving them tips on how to have trans-friendly conversations. It's a racket. It's a total racket.
It is a racket. Yeah.
There was another really good article today in the Australian by Claire Lehman, one of the editors at Willette, and she did an excellent piece defending what Kath said around kids being sterilised and mutilated. And there's a guy on YouTube. He calls himself, the channel's called Shapeshifter.
Yes, I saw him. Oh, so sad.
Yeah. So he has, gone through the whole genital surgery, and I think he's just hit around the 10-year mark, and he's realized that it is all bullshit and that he can't change sex, and he now has no sex drive. He's got osteoporosis, scoliosis in his spine, a lump in his breast, and he's talking about, and he used the words, I have been sterilized, my genitals have been mutilated.
And he's so insightful. And he said he took time off, YouTube, because he did all these, usual trans YouTuber stuff. And he's been away for many months, and he'd actually been in therapy, just CBT, and came to the realization that it was all just one great big scam, and he'd been stooged. And the insight that he is showing now, it's hard to believe that the same person could have believed all this other rubbish. But I've noticed that with detransitioners, they kind of wake up and it all makes sense to them. And he was actually apologizing to TERFs, and he used the word, he says, I'm so sorry, TERFs. He says, you guys have shown me so much compassion and blah, blah, blah. And we're there going, well, because the whole thing is that we can see what's happening to them. We don't hate trans people. We want to avoid people going through what they're going through, because we've seen people come out the other side. And, we've seen what it does to children.
He talked also about internalized homophobia. He said, I could have just been an effeminate gay guy, and instead all this has happened to me.
Yep.
The Australian media will catch up eventually.
But there have been a couple of good articles this week. Our friend Jasmine, like so many of our guests, have been speaking to the media. It's so exciting. But our friend Jasmine Sussex, who was a former breastfeeding counsellor at the ABA, has really been making the news this week. Now, she was interviewed coming up to Mother's Day for The Age, and right at the last minute, The Age dropped the article because Jasmine, and through her association with us as well, this little channel, was deemed to be too problematic a figure because she is a TERF. And so they dropped the article, which was about the Australian Breastfeeding Association, erasing female sex-based language, about, trans women attempting to breastfeed and other gross things like that, and about the capture of the ABA. So, the Age just dropped it and just ran a little news article that didn't feature Jasmine or any of the other people that were involved in it. And then a couple of days after that, other news agencies jumped on the story, and there's been some fantastic things in the media. So The Age's loss is our gain and Jasmine's gain.
Look, it's gone really far. It's Jasmine's been on Ben Fordham's radio show, Sky News, with Rita Panahi. She also wrote an article about it for the Herald Sun. And now it's gone all the way to the UK, and GB News have picked up on it and ran a story on it. So fantastic. It's finally getting the attention that it deserves. But what happened at the Age, like what they ended up printing was just this so watered down. And from what I understand, there's a trans activist working at the Age who demanded that it be, toned down. And apparently, some people at the Age even watched TERF Talk.
Hi.
Watching again. Hi, editors and journalists at the Age. Do your bloody job.
And I've had people say to me that they search us every week for an update because they're too scared to subscribe in case someone recognises their name or their email address. So that, so hi, all you journos at the Age. Thanks for watching.
So funny. And well, the other good thing that has come out of TERF Talk, partly, I ended up sending last week's episode to a journalist called Julie Cross, and she did an article for the Brisbane, is it the Courier Mail, I think it's called?
Yeah.
About Linda and Sue getting essentially bullied out of the Animal Justice Party. So that's got some airtime as well, their story. I think that's great. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, the leftist media, the left-leaning media, ABC, SBS, they're still, just full-on trans propaganda and nothing gender critical at all. No critical thinking applied. But at least the other channels are publishing our side of things,
Yeah, slowly. SBS did a terrible piece all about the poor trans people, and we shouldn't be discussing these issues during an election, and it was really pathetic.
I'll tell that to your support dog.
How funny was that the UK guy from Stonewall that took his support dog to court or whatever happened? Oh my God.
That's it. We see all the abuse and we see these attacking nasty people that seek us out in comments, that come to our Twitter pages and comment horrible things underneath. So we see them as, on the attack. And then as soon as you turn around and respond to them, they're like, scary TERFs. Which one are we?
Yeah, they're cry bullies.
Yeah. Are we trying to ruin their lives or not? When we're not. But I get the same trans activists commenting on my Twitter for years. Years. And it's like, well, if I'm so offensive and if this stuff is so harmful for you, go away. Don't look at it.
That's right. What was the one you were talking about just before we started?
Look, I don't know how. Someone shared something, and it's a trans identifying male. He's got an over 18 porn account on his Twitter, as with a link to his OnlyFans with full nudity and whatever. And his fetish is expressing substances from his hormone-induced breasts. That is his kink. So the Australian Breastfeeding Association, who wants to encourage AGPs to breastfeed that unknown junk out of their hormone breasts that aren't anything like, mother's milk. They say it never happens. I'll send you the link. You'll need a strong stomach. It was revolting. And it's his fetish. His fetish is to squeeze milk out of his own breast, drink it, give it to his girlfriend, and to boast about, how wonderful he is at doing all this stuff. We are told constantly that these sick perverts don't exist. And are, nothing like any of the deviant men that are out there. Well, the evidence suggests otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, trans identifying men are not Blair White. They're not.
Yeah.
And even if they were, he doesn't belong in women's spaces.
That's right.
Yeah.
That'd be a really good one to send to the ABA.
Yeah, I'm going to, or someone will. And they're probably watching this video now. They watch our videos too, because apparently we've defamed them. But oh well.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't heard from any court yet, so that's good.
Well, they say any publicity is good publicity. Maybe get dragged off to a tribunal will be good for us. Seems like all our guests are getting attention, and yet we're here in the dungeon going,
Okay, I'm just looking at my notes. There have been some other things happen. I'd like to do a shout out to Anna McCormack for going out on the streets in Brisbane and handing out Respect My Sex flyers. She said that she got her and I think 2 or 3 other women, and you know, it was mixed responses from the public, as you'd expect. So it's some good, some bad, but thank you, Anna, and the other women involved in that. The ABC, the Drum, they had on a trans-identified male to talk about how their meeting with the New South Wales Premier Perrottet went, because
okay.
Remember, so it went, Perrottet said a woman is a member of the female sex or whatever he said on radio, and males shouldn't be competing in women's sport, and freaking trans activists demanded a meeting with him to educate him, and just the ABC giving these guys like so much airtime to air their grievances. It's so unbalanced. And did you watch it?
No, because I used to watch the Drum, and since all this trans stuff's been flooding them, I can't stand it, because there's rational and intelligent journalists on that show have just, they're so open-minded, their brains have fallen out.
Yeah.
I can't stomach it anymore. I can't stomach any of the ABC anymore, because as soon as I'm sitting there watching something, it'll be some pro-trans propaganda or some anti-women propaganda, or some erasure of female language. And this is the national broadcaster, and I just can't stomach it. Even when they have those descriptive captions to help people understand what they're seeing visually, which is to aid people with disabilities. Even the captions are, a lot of the things that they say are they, them, and like all the pronouns and stuff have even made their way into the description captions. It's just that entrenched that I can't stomach it.
I watched the ABC News at 7 o'clock, and at some point during this week, it was a story, I think, about how female umpires in AFL are copying all sorts of misogynistic abuse. Yep. And they introduced it with female and non-binary umpires, blah, 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 blah. Just that this non-binary thing seems to be applied to women, but not so much men. There are some men, but to women. I'm fucking sick of it. It gives me the shits.
You never see men and non-binaries. It's always women and non-binaries. Actually, on that umpire thing, the Age did an article on it, and I wrote a response. They didn't publish it at all, but it said, with all this misogyny and abuse that umpires and players in the AWFL are copying, it's not exactly a good time to introduce men into women's sport. Because it's true.
Good point.
Yeah, it's true. Why would you add some more men and some more misogyny?
Crazy. Well, our guest has arrived. I'm going to bring her. This week we have the wonderful Nerissa joining us from Queensland.
Yay!
Going to give us a little bit of an update about what's happening up in Queensland. If you can hear us, Nerissa, just switch on your audio and video, because self-ID is, here she is.
Hey!
Oh, just the audio. Yeah, bottom left-hand corner. I can't prompt you to.
Hey.
Hey, you got it.
How you going?
Good. How are you, Nerissa?
Yeah, not bad. How about you? And
yeah, all right.
We're good.
all right.
Chewing the fat.
Cold Melbourne.
Yeah, it's cold here too. It's pouring rain. Awful.
There you go. Now, so you have been at this fight longer than I have. How did
Not by much, Stars, I don't think.
Okay. How did you get involved? What prompted you? When did you realize? Did you have a peak trans moment?
Lots. But mind you, I don't think I ever really thought it was okay for, like, if I had ever known back prior to what I know now that trans women are women, I would have never thought that was fine. So I don't know that I've been, converted from anything else that I wasn't already. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But then, I don't know why, I had a lot of time on my hands. I was working a job where I did early mornings and then I had afternoons free. And so I got into Twitter. This is, 2018 or so. And just was looking at what was happening in the UK and I'm just like, what the fuck? And also my sister's a rad femme and she is a social worker. And so she was a bit ahead of the curve and she mentioned a few things in passing, like back in 2015, 16. And I remember thinking, that sounds a bit offensive. But she had looked into it more than I had at the time. And then, got into, like I said, Twitter, UK, what was happening over there, and then following Graham Linehan mainly and other women. And I guess there was this one video that always stuck in my head, and you've all probably seen it by now. It's that one where the bloke in the States, it is ma'am, and he's this huge dude and he's so aggressive, and these poor people at the store are just like, you just feel so sorry for them, and he's just raging. He's just a typical ADP, just unhinged. And that was like, oh, what the fuck, this is so not cool. That was probably the peak trans moment, if any.
Yeah.
Did you have one?
Many memes came out of that as well.
Yeah. Lots of good memes. Lots and lots of good memes in that case.
Mine was really just reading J.K. Rowling's essay. And it all just sort of took off from there. And like a week after I read the essay, I got attacked in this like faux feminist group for saying pregnant women instead of pregnant people. And again, it was just like, oh my God, this person's crazy. And I really thought this person probably has some kind of personality disorder when I was dealing with her in the comments.
Yeah.
And then, you go down the rabbit hole and you find, personality disorder does seem to go quite often hand in hand with the trans identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about you? Oh, you've had many. Yeah.
Mine because I've known trans people nearly my whole life, and I've never, like you, I've never considered them actual women. But the peak trans for me, when I started talking about it publicly, was when my father-in-law transitioned 6 months before Bruce Jenner. So that was it, and I just went, nah. And everyone's expecting us to affirm him, and it was just the stupidest thing. I had young kids, and of course
now.
Yeah, pardon?
And is he still now?
Oh, he's gone off into AGP land. Like, it's my former father-in-law, my eldest daughter's grandfather, and he stole the family money and went off and took it to go and have facial feminization, and all that stuff. And he went off and did, at 65, mind you, and he went off and did a nursing degree so he could go and, freak out patients. And, and it was funny because I had small kids, and I was thinking to myself, if I was to give birth, I would allow my mother-in-law to be there because she's a woman. But I would never allow him to be there because he's a man. And him identifying as a woman does not change that.
Yep.
And that's all I could think about. And then yeah, you know, I was, and it started off so innocently because I'm like, of course they're not actual women.
Yeah.
And then that shit started. And then, because then I got really indignant and thought, how dare you gaslight me?
Yeah.
And it was the gaslighting that triggered me. The fact that I was expected to affirm this person that I 100% knew was male in every conceivable way. And that his wife, my mother-in-law, who is now dead and died of self-neglect 2 years, well, you know, traumatized and self-neglect 2 years after he left, she was dead. You know, and the way she was treated, the way the children were treated, and he was stunning and brave. And if he had done everything that he did but didn't identify as a woman, he would be like Richard Pusey or one of the other disgusting men. But because he identifies as trans, he was absolved of all responsibility, and it made me livid.
Did it?
That's one thing that's really hard to accept, isn't it? Sorry, Stass.
Okay.
Just the, you know, not only the conflict of rights that we know are there, but also just the compelled speech and thought. Like, just because this person decides this is the real me, the whole world is supposed to just play along. Like, and you know, we've seen it plenty of times. Like, I identify as a watermelon. I identify as a millionaire. Like, that doesn't change any material facts for anybody else, because it's not true. And what I think about me has nothing to do with anybody else. But how insane that, like, this is where we're at, that it actually, we can be forced to call him a her. Like,
And there's a survivor of male violence and someone who works with survivors of male violence to be gaslit in that way and to be told that, you know, potential perpetrators are the same sex as me after some of the horrendous things that men do to women. Like, I'm not standing for it.
No.
I'm not.
No, 100%.
Well, you've got self-ID on the horizon up there in Queensland. Where's it up to? Do you know, have you been following? I know you're busier now.
Yeah, with the little one. Yeah, I am following it as much as I can. So it's been under review. So it's the Queensland Birth, Deaths and Marriages Registration Act, which is under review. It has been under review since 2018. There's been various consultation papers, discussion papers and what have you. And Shannon Fentiman, who is the Attorney General of Queensland, and she's also the Minister for Justice, Women and the Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence, is the one that's pushing this. So there was a big, it sort of got re-energised last year. There was a big petition from a biological male who lives not far from where I live, who thinks he's a girl, and had a 15,000 strong petition wanting the Queensland government to change the current legislation. And Shannon Fentiman spoke about this petition in Parliament and saying that, yes, it needs to happen so that transgender people like this young man who should then, can update their birth certificate so he can change it to female without having undergone any gender reassignment surgery, which is currently what the legislation is in Queensland, which I think is the same in New South Wales. So yeah, it would essentially be self-ID. So no surgery, no wrong sex hormones have to be taken, which that's, that's fine. Just nothing needs to be done to identify as the opposite sex and to have it legally recognised, same as in what's happening in Victoria, Ange. And that's where we're up to with that. Shannon said last year they were going to introduce it last year and it didn't happen. And what are we now? We're already in May and still it hasn't been introduced. But yeah, it's essentially just legislating in favour of sexist stereotypes.
Yep.
And the problem with it isn't that men can now go and have their birth certificates changed. It's the fact that it emboldens those that never intend to do anything about it to claim that they're a woman. So it doesn't even, like most of the men that I've encountered in female-only spaces probably haven't got a female birth certificate. But they know that if I object to them being there, they can take me to the Human Rights Tribunal and their rights will be defended over mine.
Correct.
They know
gender
that.
identity is protected in legislation.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's not even about the birth certificates anymore.
But I mean,
what
I think it's
focused on.
I think it's important though, because
Yeah,
it's
definitely
legally falsifying a historical record of birth, a document that's meant to be a documentation of fact and reality, and people are able to change that. Like, and I can't go and I identify as a 21-year-old, so I can change my birth certificate so that my year of birth is different. Like, I mean, how insane! Like, you shouldn't be able to change the marker on your birth certificate. Yeah. But I agree, most of them probably will not, but it still protects them and allows them to access any and all female-only spaces. So rape crisis shelters, female prisons, female changing rooms. You know, we go to the swimming pool. I take my daughter to the swimming pool, and, you know, I was talking to other mums about this and piquing them, and they said, you know, if we were to come to the swimming pool and we know that there's going to be men using the female-only changing rooms where we're changing with our daughters, we're vulnerable, we're changing our babies, you know, we're juggling, and you're often just there nude in the changing room. We're not prudes, but I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that with blokes there, transgender males there. And we're told that we're bigoted for having those very natural reactions.
It's outrageous, just outrageous.
But yeah, what else? I mean, already in Queensland, there's essentially, you know, we're seeing it more and more. You know, you go into a women's change room, women's bathrooms, shopping centres, whatever, and there's, you know, 15, 16-year-old males in there doing their makeup and taking up space and just being, they don't pass. They're not even trying to pass, but they're just being in the female-only space because they know, yeah, like you said, if you were to confront them, which you don't, because they're bigger than you and there's more than one of them, and whatever reason, they know that they could argue that they're allowed to be there. So what difference introducing self-ID would do, I don't really know. It's probably just going to give them more confidence to invade female-only spaces.
That's what it's done in Victoria.
Yeah.
Because before lockdown, when self-ID came in, and before lockdown, I never saw men in female-only domestic violence services or sexual assault services or recovery services. And since lockdown finished, that 2 years where we're in and out of lockdown, seeing them everywhere. And that's self-ID. Yeah. It's emboldened them. And also the prolific, and because gender clinics have become so prolific now. There were 2 clinics in Victoria 5 years ago, and now there's 30-something. So there's satellite gender clinics all over Victoria at the same time as self-ID coming in, because people are like, oh, it's only such a small minority of society. But it's not now. And more and more people are trans-identifying, and those that even aren't trans-identifying, the non-binaries, are using their non-binary status to bring trans people and biological males into female-only services, because if you allow a non-binary, then you're allowing anyone. So it's all sinister, and I never believed that it would happen so quickly and that they would be this emboldened. I thought there'd be these rare cases where someone who was trans-identifying wanted to attend, and people said, oh, look, you know, you're not that well in the head, we'll let you come, but we'll put you over here. But no, they just walk in front and centre and center themselves in the room and go, oh, I'm here, and everyone else can bugger off. Which, and again, women are self-including.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what we heard was happening in the UK several years back. And, you know, you'd read these threads of women in exactly these positions, you know, similar to what Holly Lawford-Smith did with the No Conflict They Said website. Women were telling their stories anonymously, and I remember reading them and thinking, oh my God, this is awful. And it's exactly what we're seeing happen now in Australia and parts of Australia, because self-ID.
I think it's a real power trip for these guys.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to. That's all I see. Infuriating. I don't know if you saw, Sel Grover has been, you know, trying to get a meeting Did you see that? And
I saw that she'd been trying to get a meeting and was unsuccessful, yes, with Shannon Fentiman. And a few women's groups in Queensland, International Women's Day, Brisbane, the Ange and Anna McCormack and co have also written to Shannon, and we've been told that all the relevant stakeholders have been consulted.
And we know they haven't. We know there's domestic violence orgs all throughout Queensland and the rest of Australia, major ones who have not been consulted on this issue.
It's just astounding that, like I said, she's the Minister for Justice, Women and the Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence, and she's actively ignoring women.
It's so infuriating. How Labor hasn't been in. When was your last election? Was it last year?
I don't even know.
Wasn't that?
I think last year. I think it was last year, wasn't it?
I think so.
State election. Yeah. Yes. So Labor has been in the news just in the last few days with regards to Robbie Katter from Katter's Australian Party, with the Save Women's Sports private motion, private members motion. So that was on Wednesday. And, you know, like for those of you that haven't actually read, I know you guys have, but for people listening who have not read what the motion actually said, like it's just common sense, but anywho, Mr. Speaker, I give notice that this House supports women's rights by agreeing that 1, allowing biological men to play in female sport will erode the integrity of female sport. 2, anyone who supports biological men playing in female sport, irrespective of age group, level or code, is complicit in eroding the integrity of female sport and therefore women's rights. 3, based on the insurmountable physical advantages, biological males participating in female sport pose an unfair competitive advantage against and/or safety risk towards female athletes. So how anyone could disagree with any of that, I honestly don't know. But the LNP supported it, and obviously Robbie Katter's Australian Party supported it. The Greens didn't support it, and the Labor Party blocked it. And my understanding is the Labor MPs were not allowed to cross the floor to support the motion. And that's pretty rare. Like, it's pretty rare for politicians to cross the floor at all, but to actually block them from doing so, like, you've got to wonder, is that because they knew that some of their party were going to support it? I don't know. But I mean, Robbie Katter, you know, he just said, I've got 2 young girls who will one day want to play sport, and it would be, you know, be like us, you know, we've got kids and we want, well, some of us have kids and we want to make sure that they've got the same opportunities that we had in sport and things like that. Like myself with my daughter. Like all he's saying is that women should have the right to have single sex sport without, you know, risking threats of being taken to the Anti-Discrimination Tribunal for males who demand to be included in women's only sport. But yeah, the ALP has shown us that they don't care at all about women's rights. All they care about is inclusivity and the rights of transgender people. And the Greens MP, Amy McMahon, even said that it comes down to misogyny, this motion. I mean, how can you read those 3 points and say that's misogynistic?
It's so backwards. It's so Orwellian.
It's Orwellian. And I mean, what's her face? She's the member for Palmerston, Ali King, went on to say, like, she shouted out during the, you know, half-hour debate. What did she say? Women don't want your protection. We didn't ask for your protection.
Like,
from Save Women's Sport, we have received many emails and contacts from many women, from mothers, from parents, from coaches, from female athletes themselves in Australia, saying that they need protection because there are males invading their sports and their changing room facilities and their, you know, everything, and they can't say no. And there is risk of injury. There is obviously the clearly unfair, obvious advantages that biological males have, competitive athletic advantage. So So to say that women don't want your protection, I mean, it's just a bit over the top dramatic, but women are asking for our sports to be protected, to be single sex sports.
Didn't you say you went to school with her or something?
I did, yes.
Right. And back in high school, was she an idiot?
I always thought she was quite an intelligent woman. She did used to work as a solicitor. You know, she's intelligent, and I guess I looked up to her in a way. She's a little bit older than me, and just totally captured.
It's so
like the Labor Party generally.
It is just so bizarre. It's like everyone's lost their fucking minds going along with it. I do not understand. I cannot comprehend how it has just infected so many people's minds to think that this is okay.
With the sex work stuff too. It's like, it's not just the trans issue. It's, you know, this idea that prostitution is empowering. It's a whole bunch of stuff where, you know, things that we know are really harmful for women are being painted as feminist.
Female empowerment. I know.
Yeah. It's like, no. Although I'm heartened by, like, even just on Twitter, I'm heartened by new accounts popping up. Yes. Girls, you know, young women like 19, 20 years old, radical feminists. And I'm like, whoa, you know, and some within this country too. And I'm very, very impressed.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I do have this hope that, you know, eventually this will all lead to a really strong revival of the women's liberation movement. Fingers crossed.
Well, I think while we've got public figures, people like Grace Tame, gaslighting society, that the majority of people believe this trans bullshit, I think it's going to be difficult for younger people to speak up, because I was talking about this earlier, and the reason this shaming occurs is, and this sort of dismissal of opposition views, is to create a false narrative that their opinion is the majority opinion. So if they silence us, everyone's going to think that they're right. And that's exactly why they do it. They shame our side, which is the side of reality, common sense, and all of those important things. They shame us into not speaking up, or younger people into not speaking up and following the mantra of trans women are women or sex work is work. And they do that in order to create a false narrative that their view is the only view, or their view is the only acceptable view. And you've just got to say, well, no. And we're fortunate that we're able to do that. Other people, you know, their jobs are dependent, their partners' jobs, whatever. So, you know, we've just got to get as many people who can speak up to speak up.
Yeah, exactly.
And what are your thoughts on the federal election and Catherine Deves? Have you been following it along?
Yeah, I have. Obviously, Catherine was the co-founder of Save Women's Sport, and so I've been keeping in touch with her. She's obviously stepped back from the Save Women's Sport campaign to focus on her candidacy. But yeah, what she has done to shine a light on this is just exponential. As you know, we've just watched it from the moment that she was pre-selected, and you know, everything that went down, you know, with all the Twitter exposing the Twitter comments that she'd made, and it's really done such a great deal to propel this into the limelight, into the spotlight, and to make sure there is more debate being had. I'm lucky where I am because I did check with all my my candidates, the sitting member who's LNP, as well as all the other candidates in my electorate, and the ALP person, even though she's a lesbian, would not tell me what she thought a woman was. She said that she just accepts people as they are, typical ALP line. So as a previous Labor voter, I was never going to vote for her. The LNP dude is all right, and he agrees with most of our sentiments, that females have a right to single-sex spaces, and identify how you like, but that doesn't change your sex, and the rest of it. However, then there was an independent within my electorate who I just happened to run into on the street, and she was getting her 100 signatures to make sure she could actually properly stand, and she did that and got chatting, and she confirmed that she knew that there was only two sexes, male and female, and that men don't belong in female sport, and that was enough for me. So I've already cast my early vote, and it was encouraging to, I watched bits of the leaders' debates, but not the whole thing. But it was encouraging to see both the Anthony Albanese and Scott Morrison, pretty good responses when asked what is a woman, member of the female sex, and what's the other one? It was a very similar response.
You said adult human female one.
Adult human, I think you're right. Female. It's just, and it's interesting because, again, on Twitter, someone was saying, well, what they should be asking is, what is a trans woman? Because what is it?
It's a man.
It's a man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what way it's going to go, though.
Yeah, well, that was my next question. Yeah, look, I've been quietly confident that Liberal Nationals are going to get up. But after that leaders debate,
Most recent one,
the press is all saying that Albo won the pub test, and now I don't know. If Labor get in, my God, it's going to be 4 years of hell for us.
It's hard to know, though, isn't it? Because it sounds like Anthony Albanese hasn't totally lost his tether on reality.
Yeah.
And he's the leader of that party, but obviously within the states, it seems like, Daniel Andrews, Anastasia Palaszczuk, and the likes of them, they're totally lost.
Yeah. Remember the federal minister for health in the Liberal Party couldn't explain what a woman is, and she's a woman. Like, there's a whole bunch of, both political parties have been captured by.
And the LNP has terrible track record on other women's rights issues as well. So I don't know. And Scott Morrison's just a moron. Like, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But we're fucked either way, aren't we? Like, there's no one standing up for women's rights, women's sex-based rights.
No.
Yeah.
Senator Claire Chandler in Tassie does an amazing job, obviously, and they will be, once this election's over, that Save Women's Sports bill will be debated in federal parliament. So I guess we have to hope that they get a better outcome than what's happened in Queensland with this motion being knocked back by the ALP. Again, though, I think it's good that it was put forward, because it's shown us where they do stand 100%, that, in case we were wondering, the ALP in Queensland don't care about women's rights to single-sex sport.
Yeah. You just reminded me, who else came out and made a tweet this week in support of women's sex-based rights was Darren Hinch.
He did too, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
Yes, I agree. Yep,
we'll
take it.
Yeah.
What is it, the Human headline?
Yeah.
Yeah, every day there's little wins, isn't there? Like, even when Ben Fordham a few weeks ago gave Kath that really good interview on 2GB, and then he did a big post debunking all these inaccurate reporting on things she'd said and hadn't said. I thought that was terrific, because we had actually, from Save Women's Sports, been trying to get him to listen to us for, since 2020, really, when we started. So, there's little wins that you've got to celebrate along the way.
So are you sort of taking over from Kath from the Save Women's Sports?
Well, currently I'm doing, some of that, but I don't know if moving forward, I don't know what the future holds for me in that space, just because my little one, I just don't get time to do anything. But that's okay. She's only 14 months, so maybe as she gets older, I'll have a bit more time to dedicate. But I'm just a stay-at-home mum activist currently, and then we do some direct action in Brisbane. We've got one coming up actually 28th of May in Brisbane, if anyone's going to be in the area, to protest the plans to introduce self-ID in Queensland. So that should be good. And that's organised again by Anna McCormack from International Women's Day Brisbane Meanjin. So yeah, I try to get, sunny coast of Brisbane, I try to get down there as much as I can to participate in those events and meet other like-minded women and our allies.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It does. Yeah.
They're a great bunch of women. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Nerissa. Was there any last things you want to get across, tell everyone?
I don't think so, no. But keep up the good work, ladies. I know plenty of people who tune into your podcast and say it like it is. So thank you for having me. And yeah, keep it up.
Great to see you. Thanks heaps.
Likewise.
All right. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So, Nerissa's great.
All the women in Queensland are just fantastic. They're just, they're far more organised than we are here in Melbourne, that's for sure. But I suppose we're fairly spread out, and there's a little good group close to Brisbane there. So
yeah. I don't know. I got to, we went up to Brisbane back in March. There's like a different vibe up there. Yeah. It seems easier to go out on the street and do stuff. Whereas, I don't know, here in Melbourne, there's sort of, I'm more fearful down here. And
the streets of Melbourne. It is. Well, we have been in a position where we've been threatened. Yeah. Like personally, I've been threatened by a sea of trans activists who want to punch my head in. Like I've been, doxed online by dudes who call me a militant, dangerous TERF and that I deserve a punch in the face. So, I'm a bit hesitant to walk around like with my adult human female banner down the street, And so it is aggressive here in Melbourne. We're close to the university where most of the, activism and trades hall, where the rest of the militant, angry, union-led activism comes from. And, Melbourne is, Brisbane's a laid-back city. I used to live there. Like, it's just laid back. Maybe it's the weather, less people, less crowded. Melbourne is a metropolis, and it is angry and smelly and dirty and busy and crowded, and it has a different energy. Yeah. And it's an impersonal energy. Like, we were shocked in Brisbane because people would open doors for us, men and women would open the door and go, "Oh, after you," or they'd say, "Excuse me." Now you can walk around Melbourne for 3 hours and not hear those words from anyone, even though you're sardined in. It's a different energy. So yeah, I think that's part of it. But I also think that generally women are scared to put their face out here in Melbourne.
Yeah, I think it also has something to do with how far the laws have gone in the trans favour down here in Melbourne compared to up there. Yeah. I mean, it's everywhere. Something I forgot to mention earlier was that journalist Julie Cross. She also did a piece about how ACON promoted a trans-identified male for Lesbian Day of Visibility. Yeah. And that was in the Daily Telegraph. So that was excellent. And she spoke with Bronwyn Winter. And so Bronwyn was quoted in that article. I'm just having a guess here, but I think that's the first time any mainstream Australian news outlet has touched upon the impact on lesbians as a result of this trans insanity.
The cotton ceiling, which is the peak trans moment for many, many, many people. This insistence that lesbians have to accept trans women in their dating pool.
Yeah.
And it's targeted. Like, I saw something the other day where there are workshops for trans women to, challenge the cotton ceiling, which is to force women to date them.
Gross.
Yeah.
It's so rapey. It's so homophobic. We just got to keep
there's million dykes on bikes now. So culturally, the message is to young lesbians, men, women doesn't make any difference. No wonder they're all identifying as queer, because if you identify yourself as a lesbian, as someone who is specifically attracted to other women, then they'll target you as a bigot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, mate, the books that are going to be written on this in the years to come, the documentaries, the exposés. I've sometimes imagined detransitioners getting together and women who have had their breasts removed doing some sort of protest where they're all shirtless, showing what's happened to them. Stuff like that happening. We're going to get there eventually.
Well, I just can't wait till all these Jane Caro and Sally Rugg and all these other, trans activists, these, popular trans activists who have a platform in the media. I said to a few of them this week, enjoy your cognitive dissonance while it lasts, because I just can't wait for all this stuff to come out into the mainstream like it has in the UK, and these arseholes to have egg on their faces, condemning women to sharing female-only spaces with male, traumatised women particularly, or vulnerable women, elderly women, women, we don't need an excuse not to be around men, but for them to force us to be around men, and also to force children who would otherwise be gay or lesbian to have mutilating surgery, and, life-altering medication. These people have a public profile, and they're advocating for that, for 4-year-olds to be told that they were born in the wrong body and in the future they're going to have drugs and surgery. These are public figures.
In the midst of all that, you reminded me there was some statement that came out this week that was signed off by 100 different women's organizations, all in support of trans women are women. And look, I didn't really know what to do with it. I was just like, oh, there's no point. I'm not going to even bother writing an angry letter to any of these people. But one of the signatories was Women with Disabilities organization. And I just thought, oh my God, you guys are advocating for women with disabilities to have no choice about the sex of the person that's caring for them, right?
I think people haven't met an AGP in their freaking life. I have. They've got no concept of what the average trans person is like.
Yeah.
Trans-identified male, that is.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And then also women with disabilities are at significantly increased risk of being sexually assaulted because they're so vulnerable, because they can't always fight back.
I did notice that someone wrote a thread, someone who works in domestic violence, explaining why in detail women who have experienced trauma at the hands of men need single sex spaces. And fucking Jane Caro shared it and agreed with it. Mm-hmm. The same people who are insisting trans women are women are reading that shit and going, oh yeah, but trans women are women.
I'm pretty sure that thread was with regards to the first ever women only trauma centre opening up here in Victoria. But we already knew that trauma centre is going to include males. We know it. So
it was in the fine print.
I found the whole thing really disingenuous. How can you be, like you said, the cognitive dissonance involved in saying all that positive stuff, accurate stuff about why women need women-only trauma services, but you're going to put men in there. It's just,
honestly, I sound like a broken record because I keep saying, why does the safeguarding that everyone accepts that we need, because a minority of men are monsters, why does that disappear the second a man says, I am a woman? It's that simple. Why?
Yep.
And they can't answer you. Trans women are women.
Same with child safeguarding.
So I can see why nobody. I can see why people get in trouble for being on this thing. We are pretty turfy, I guess. But I don't think anything we're saying. I don't think we're not. I don't think we're saying anything that is controversial, in the sense that we're not being abusive. We're frustrated. I mean, anyone who watches this knows that we're not malicious. We're not targeting, trans people with harassment or some of the things that I've seen trans people do towards us, like incite violence against us or, any of that. We're not doing any of that. We're trying to get our voices heard and point out the absurdity of the other side.
Yeah. Look, because a couple of people this week have said, oh, you should change the name of your channel.
Yeah.
And then we can use you as a legitimate news source. And look, I don't know about you, but my whole intention with this channel was just to talk to the women that are here with us already going through this. I'm not here to change minds, really. I'm here to preach to the converted.
And people have told me that they put TERF into YouTube looking to understand what a TERF is. And we came up and we peaked trans them just like that. They don't even know what a TERF is. They hear, oh, TERFs are bad, TERFs are Nazis, TERFs are bigots. So they go, oh, we'll find out what a TERF is, pop this in, get us, and then all of a sudden they're on our side. Like, people have told me that. Look, how did you find us? Oh, I put TERF into YouTube. And that was the idea. That's why we use that word, one, to take the sting out of it, because it is a slur. Mm-hmm. But also because to change, well, that's one where we can change people's minds, that they can look and go, well, hang on, these women make sense. If they're TERFs, then maybe I'm a TERF. Yes, TERF pride. TERF pride worldwide.
It's a bit like it's like the N word. We get to use it, you guys don't. And on that note, we better finish up. But as usual, shout out to Beth Ref. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get you on and have you share your story. But thanks to all our subscribers. Please like and share, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Stassja. Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Bye. Oh, whoops, wrong button.